The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It was a place where hundreds of alien species came together to talk, trade, and solve problems. The Great Hall floated in space, a massive station built from crystal and metal, home to ambassadors from every corner of known space. For most of those 12,000 years, humanity did not exist in the eyes of the galaxy. Earth was just another small planet circling a yellow star. Humans were still learning to build cities when the first alien civilizations were mapping distant galaxies. But humans learned fast, very fast. When humanity finally discovered how to travel faster than light, the elder races watched with mild interest. They saw a young species, barely out of its cradle, taking its first steps into the stars. The aliens welcomed humans into the assembly with polite smiles and gentle words. They treated humanity like a child at an adult table. Cute, harmless, not worth worrying about. That was before the Vorthak came. The Vorthak Dominion was a nightmare-given form. They were massive creatures, each one standing 3 meters tall, with bodies that mixed flesh and machine. They had evolved on a dark world where only the most brutal predators survived. They did not seek peace. They did not want trade. They wanted only one thing: everything. The Vorthak swept through the galaxy like a plague. They consumed entire worlds, stripping them of resources and life. Their ships moved in swarms so large they blocked out the light of stars. In just 40 days, they had destroyed 17 star systems. Billions of beings died. Entire species vanished from existence. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency meeting. Ambassador Krell Voss of the Sindari Collective stood before the gathered representatives. His body was made of living crystal. And right now that crystal was flickering with fear. His voice echoed through the Great Hall. "We are losing," he said simply. "Our fleets are failing. The Vorthak advance cannot be stopped. We need every species to contribute military forces. This is not a request. This is a desperate plea for survival." The response was immediate. The Mithrani, an ancient race of philosophers and warriors, sent 300 of their elegant warships. The Chalaxian hive, an insectoid species that numbered in the trillions, contributed 5 million drone soldiers. The Orvani, beings of pure psychic energy, deployed their famous telekinetic warriors who could tear ships apart with their minds. Everyone gave what they could. Everyone except humanity. The human ambassador was a woman named Katie Marsh. She was small by human standards, with short brown hair and calm eyes. She did not look impressive. She did not try to look impressive. When the assembly turned to her, expecting promises of great fleets and massive armies, she simply smiled. "We will send what we can," she said. The alien ambassadors exchanged confused looks. The humans had been members of the assembly for less than 50 years. Their fleet was small. Their military was unknown. Most species had already written them off as useless in this war. 3 days passed. The front lines were chaos. Allied ships fought desperately against the Vorthak swarm. Millions died every hour. The situation grew more hopeless with each passing moment. Then a single ship dropped out of hyperspace. It was small, barely larger than a transport vessel. Its hull was painted matte black, so dark it seemed to swallow light. It carried no fleet markings, no military symbols, no identification of any kind. Just a name painted in small white letters on the side. The Quiet Professional. General Veltarak was the commander of the Allied forces. He was a Karathi, a species of tall insectoid warriors with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when they were annoyed. Right now, those mandibles were clicking very loudly. "This is the human contribution?" he demanded, staring at the sensor readings. "One ship?" His aide checked the data twice. "Yes, General. 1 frigate-class vessel, crew complement of 47 soldiers. Against the Vorthak Dominion." The general made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a curse. "The humans mock us. But he was a professional. He would meet with them, hear what they had to say, and then send them home. At least they had come. That was more than some species had done. The human ship docked at the command station. General Veltorak waited at the airlock with his senior staff, ready to greet the human commander with whatever dignity the situation allowed. The airlock opened. The man who stepped out was thoroughly unremarkable. Average height for a human. Brown hair cut short. Eyes that were neither warm nor cold, just observant. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations, no medals, no signs of rank except for a small name tag. Reeves. Commander Danny Reeves, the man said, extending his hand in the human greeting. Representing Earth Special Operations Command. General Veltorak took the hand carefully. Human grips were surprisingly strong. General Veltorak, Allied Command. I must be honest with you, Commander. We expected more. Danny Reeves did not seem offended. He did not seem anything at all. His face was perfectly calm, perfectly neutral, like still water. You asked the Galactic Assembly for an army, he said. Humanity does not do armies. We do something else. And what is that? Behind Reeves, more humans were filing out of the ship. Men and women of various ages, all wearing the same black uniforms, all moving with the same quiet confidence. They did not march like soldiers. They did not swagger like warriors. They moved like shadows, like people who had learned to exist without being noticed. General, Reeves said, how long do your tacticians believe this war will last? Veltorak's mandibles clicked. Our most optimistic projections suggest 80 years of sustained combat. Perhaps longer. And how many systems will fall in that time? Perhaps 200. Perhaps more. Reeves nodded slowly. He looked at the holographic display showing the Vorthak advance. The swarm of enemy ships. The desperate defensive lines. He studied it the way a doctor might study a disease. We can end this war in 3 weeks, he said. The general stared at him. Impossible. The Vorthak number in the billions. Their fleets are endless. You cannot fight them with 47 soldiers. You are correct, Reeves agreed. We cannot fight them. That is not what we do. Then what do you do? Danny Reeves turned to face the general. For just a moment, something flickered in those calm eyes. Something cold, something ancient, something that made Veltorak, a warrior who had fought in a dozen wars, feel suddenly and inexplicably afraid. We do not fight wars, General. We end them, permanently. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Vorthak Dominion continued its advance, unaware that death had just arrived wearing a human face. The war room of the Allied Command was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays and nervous officers. Representatives from 30 different species sat around a long table, watching images of destruction play across the screens. The Vorthak had just consumed another system. Another billion lives lost. General Veltorak stood at the head of the table, his 4 arms folded across his chest. Beside him stood Commander Danny Reeves, still wearing that same expression of calm emptiness. Our strategy is simple, Veltorak explained to the gathered commanders. We engage the Vorthak fleets at every opportunity. We slow their advance. We reduce their numbers through attrition. Eventually, we push them back. Admiral Thixis of the Mithrani leaned forward. She was elegant even by her species standards, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like distant stars. And how long will this take? General, 80 years, perhaps longer. The room fell silent. 80 years of war. 80 years of death. Countless worlds burned to ash. There is another way. Everyone turned to look at the human commander. He had not moved, had not raised his voice. He simply spoke. And somehow the words carried more weight than any shout. Commander Reeves, Veltorak said carefully. We have discussed this. Your 47 soldiers cannot change the course of this war. You are thinking about this incorrectly, Reeves replied. He walked to the central display and pulled up new information. The screen showed a single planet deep in Vorthak territory, a fortress world. This is the seat of the Vorthak Dominion. This is where the Overmind lives. The alien commanders stirred uncomfortably. The Overmind was the leader of all Vorthak. It was a massive creature. A mountain of flesh and machinery connected to millions of its kind through psychic links. It controlled everything. Every ship, every soldier, every attack. We know of the Overmind, Admiral Thixis said. It is untouchable. 3 defensive fleets guard that world. Orbital weapons platforms ring the planet. A shield grid covers the entire surface. An assault would require millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. We do not have those resources. You are still thinking incorrectly, Reeves said. You are thinking about assault. About armies and fleets and massive battles. That is not what we do. He pressed a button, and the display changed. Detailed schematics appeared. Patrol routes, communication frequencies, guard schedules, floor plans of the Overmind's palace. How did you obtain this information? Vel'Torok demanded. Our intelligence services have been trying to gather data on that world for months. They have found nothing. Because they sent probes and drones, Reeves said. We sent people. The room went very still. You infiltrated a Vorthak fortress world, Thixis said slowly. With people. Correct. Sergeant Marcus Webb and 4 specialists landed on the surface 6 days ago. They have been gathering intelligence and preparing for the primary mission. Vel'Torok's mandibles clicked rapidly. That is impossible. The Vorthak have bioscanners, motion sensors, psionic detection grids. No one can move through their territory undetected. A woman stepped forward from the group of humans. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back tight, and eyes that missed nothing. Her name tag read Cole. Megan Cole, tactical analyst, she said. General, with respect, you are thinking like a Korathi. Your species relies on direct confrontation. Strength against strength. The Vorthak evolved the same way. They are predators. And predators expect other predators. She pulled up new images on the display. Footage from helmet cameras showing dark corridors and massive Vorthak guards walking past without seeing anything. Humans did not evolve as predators, Cole continued. We evolved as persistence hunters. We learned to track prey across vast distances, to wait for the perfect moment, to strike when our target was vulnerable. We learned patience. We learned stealth. And over thousands of years, we learned to apply those skills to our own kind. The footage showed a human soldier moving through a ventilation shaft barely wider than his body, squeezing through spaces that should have been impossible. Moving in complete silence, your species sees war as armies meeting on battlefields, Cole said. Humanity learned a different lesson. The most efficient way to end a war is not to kill enemy soldiers. It is to kill the people who make those soldiers fight. Admiral Thixis was watching the footage with wide eyes. This is assassination. No, Reeves said quietly. This is pest control. He turned back to the central display. The Overmind filled the screen, a nightmare of tentacles and neural tissue. The Vorthak Dominion is not a civilization, he explained. It is a hive mind. Every Vorthak is connected to the Overmind through psionic links. It controls their thoughts, their actions, their strategies. Remove the Overmind, and the entire Dominion collapses. The swarm becomes mindless. The war ends. And you believe your people can reach it? Vel'Torok asked. They already have. The room fell silent again. Sergeant Webb reported contact 8 hours ago, Reeves continued. His team is in position. They are awaiting final authorization to proceed. General Vel'Torok looked at the human commander for a long moment. In all his years of war, he had never seen anything like this. The other species sent fleets. They sent armies. They fought with honor and fury, meeting their enemies in open battle. The humans sent 5 people into the heart of enemy territory and asked permission to kill a god. If you fail, Thixis said, the Vorthak will know we tried. They already show no mercy, Reeves replied. And we do not fail. How can you be certain? For the first time, something like emotion crossed the human's face. Not pride. Not arrogance. Something colder. Something that had seen more death than any being in that room could imagine. Because this is what we were made for, he said. Humanity spent 10,000 years learning to kill. We killed each other. We killed our world. We became the greatest predators our planet had ever seen. And when we ran out of enemies at home, we turned our eyes to the stars. He looked around the room at the assembled commanders. These aliens, who had thought humanity was young and harmless. You asked the galaxy for an army. You wanted millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. But armies fight wars. They do not end them. Ending wars requires something different. Something precise. Something that can reach into the darkest places and remove the cancer at the source. He turned back to the display showing the Overmind. You wanted an army. Humanity sent executioners. Now, with your permission, we would like to go to work. General Veltorek looked at the human. Looked at the impossible intelligence they had gathered. Looked at the mad, beautiful simplicity of their plan. Permission granted, he said quietly. Danny Reeves nodded once. He turned to his communication officer. Send the signal to Sergeant Webb. Operation is authorized. Execute immediately. Somewhere on a distant world, deep in the heart of enemy territory, 5 human soldiers received a simple message. It was time to end a war. The fortress world of the Vorthak had no name. It did not need one. Every Vorthak knew it simply as home. The place where the Overmind dwelt. The heart of their civilization. It was a dark planet, always covered in thick clouds that blocked the sun. The Vorthak liked it that way. They had evolved in darkness and felt comfortable in shadows. They did not know that something else lived in those shadows now. Sergeant Marcus Webb had been a soldier for 23 years. He had served in jungles where the heat could kill you in hours. He had fought in deserts where the sand got into everything. He had crawled through sewers and climbed mountains and dropped from aircraft into places where no sane person would go. This was his strangest mission yet. He lay perfectly still in a ventilation shaft above the Overmind's throne room. He had been in this position for 11 hours. His muscles burned. His body screamed for movement. But Marcus did not move. He barely breathed. He had learned long ago that stillness was survival. Below him, the Overmind sat on its throne of flesh and metal. The creature was enormous, a writhing mass of tentacles and neural tissue that filled most of the chamber. Thick cables connected it to the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Through these cables, it controlled every Vorthak in existence. Marcus studied the creature through the scope of his rifle. It was unlike any weapon the galaxy had seen. Human engineers had spent decades perfecting it. A single shot could punch through starship armor. Against flesh, even the enhanced flesh of the Overmind, it would be devastating. His communicator vibrated once. The signal from Commander Reeves. Authorization granted. Execute immediately. Marcus tapped his throat mic 3 times. The signal went out to his team. Across the fortress, 4 other humans received the message. Cole Harper was positioned near the primary communication hub, a facility that connected the Overmind to its distant fleets. Nicole Vance waited outside the quarters of the Supreme Commander, the Overmind's military chief. Tyler Grant had spent 2 days working his way into the power generation facility. Kristen Blake was positioned at the shield control center. They had all been waiting. They were all ready. Marcus checked his watch. 30 seconds. He thought about the mission briefing. The Vorthak were supposed to be impossible to infiltrate. Their bioscanners could detect any living creature within 100 meters. Their psionic sensors could feel the thoughts of intruders. Their guards never slept, never tired, never stopped watching. But humans had learned something interesting about predators. They expected threats to come from outside. They watched the doors and windows and walls. They did not expect something to already be inside. The human team had landed in a cargo pod disguised as debris. They had worn suits that masked their heat signatures and biosigns. They had trained themselves to think in patterns that confused psionic scanners. They had moved through spaces the Vorthak considered too small for any threat. They had become ghosts. 20 seconds. Marcus remembered what his instructor had told him years ago in a training facility buried deep under a mountain. The enemy is always stronger than you. The enemy is always faster than you. The enemy always has more guns, more soldiers, more everything. Your only advantage is that you can be patient, you can wait, you can watch, and when the moment comes, you can strike faster than they can react. 10 seconds. Below, the Overmind shifted on its throne. Its tentacles moved slowly, like seaweed in a current. It was connected to millions of minds across the galaxy, commanding fleets and directing invasions. It had never known fear. It had never needed to. 5 seconds. Marcus exhaled slowly. His finger tightened on the trigger. His heart rate dropped to 40 beats per minute. He had done this thousands of times. He would do it thousands more. 0. 4 things happened at once. Cole Harper detonated a charge that turned the communication hub into dust and fire. In an instant, the Overmind was cut off from its fleets. Nicole Vance put 3 rounds through the skull of the Supreme Commander before his guards even knew she was there. Tyler Grant triggered a cascade failure in the power grid, plunging entire sections of the fortress into darkness. Kristen Blake destroyed the shield control center with a precise explosive charge, bringing down the planetary defenses. And Marcus Webb, lying in a ventilation shaft above the throne room, fired a single shot. The round traveled at 3 times the speed of sound. It punched through the Overmind's primary neural cluster, the brain that controlled everything. For a fraction of a second, the creature felt something it had never felt before: fear. Then it felt nothing at all. The effect was immediate and total. Across the galaxy, every Vorthak stopped moving. Their ships drifted. Their soldiers froze. The psionic network that had connected them for thousands of years suddenly went silent. The Overmind was dead, and with it, the Vorthak Dominion. Marcus was already moving before the creature hit the floor. He dropped from the ventilation shaft, landed in a roll, and sprinted for the extraction point. Alarms were screaming. Lights were flashing, but the guards who should have responded were standing still, their minds empty, their connection to the Overmind severed. He met his team at the landing pad. Cole was bleeding from a cut on her forehead. Tyler was limping. Nicole and Kristen looked tired but unharmed. They had all made it. A small shuttle descended from the clouds. It was human, painted the same matte black as the quiet professional. The pilot did not ask questions. She simply opened the door and waited. The team boarded in silence. As the shuttle lifted off, Marcus looked down at the fortress world. Fires were spreading. The Vorthak stumbled around like broken machines. Without the Overmind, they did not know what to do. They did not know how to think. "Mission complete," Marcus said into his communicator. "Target eliminated. Requesting extraction." Commander Reeves responded immediately. "Confirmed. Return to base." "Well done." That was all. No celebration, no congratulations, just acknowledgement of a job completed. Marcus leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. In a few hours, he would write his report. In a few days, he would receive a new assignment. In a few weeks, he would be somewhere else, hunting something else, ending another threat before it could grow. This was his life. This was what humans like him did. The galaxy had faced the greatest threat in its history. The elder races had gathered their armies and prepared for a war that would last a century, and 5 humans had ended it in a single night. As the shuttle broke through the clouds and headed for space, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The Vorthak had thought they were the ultimate predators. They had conquered world after world, believing nothing could stop them. They had never met humanity's quiet professionals. They had never learned what happened when the hunters became the hunted. The war ended not with a final battle, but with silence. Across the galaxy, Vorthak fleets drifted through space like ghost ships. Their crews stood motionless at their stations, alive but empty. Without the Overmind's guidance, they had no purpose, no direction, no will. They simply existed, waiting for commands that would never come. The Allied forces did not know how to react. They had prepared for decades of warfare. They had accepted that millions more would die. They had resigned themselves to a future of blood and fire. Instead, they found victory. General Veltorak stood in his command center, watching reports flood in from every sector. Vorthak ships were powering down. Occupied worlds were going quiet. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was collapsing like a house built on sand. It worked, he said softly. The humans. It actually worked. 3 weeks. That was how long it had taken. Not 80 years of grinding warfare. Not centuries of sacrifice. 3 weeks. From the moment the quiet professional arrived to the death of the Overmind, the Galactic Assembly called an emergency session. This time, the mood was very different. Ambassador Krelvos stood before the gathered representatives, his crystalline form flickering with emotions too complex to name. Relief, gratitude, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. We owe humanity a debt, he said. Their soldiers accomplished what our combined fleets could not. They ended this war before it could consume us all. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The alien ambassadors looked at each other with uncertain eyes. They had all underestimated the humans. They had all been wrong. However, Krelvos continued, we must discuss what this means for the future. The methods humanity employed were unprecedented. Commander Danny Reeves sat in the human section, watching the proceedings with his usual calm expression. Beside him, Ambassador Katie Marsh waited patiently. Commander Reeves, Krelvos said, the Assembly would like to understand your actions. We asked for military aid. You sent. I am not sure what to call them. Krell. Specialists, Reeves said. Some would call them assassins. Some would be wrong. Krelvos's light patterns shifted. In a single night, your people killed the Overmind, the Supreme Commander, 17 regional governors, and 43 senior military officers. You destroyed their communications, their power grid, their shields. You did this with 5 soldiers. 5. That is correct. How is this possible? Reeves was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried clearly through the chamber. For 12,000 years, this assembly has maintained peace through diplomacy and mutual respect. When conflicts arose, you settled them with honor. Fleets met fleets. Armies met armies. Winners and losers shook hands and went home. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. Humanity did not have that luxury. We evolved on a world of limited resources, surrounded by predators that wanted to eat us. We learned to fight before we learned to speak. And when we finally achieved civilization, we did not stop fighting. We simply became better at it. The holographic displays around the chamber activated, showing images from human history. Wars, conflicts, battles that shaped the course of their species. We invented agriculture, and then we invented siege warfare. We built cities, and then we built weapons to destroy them. Every advancement in human technology has been matched by an advancement in human violence. It is not something we are proud of. It is simply who we are. Admiral Thixis leaned forward. You speak of violence, but what your soldiers did was not violence. It was surgery. Precise removal of specific targets, with minimal collateral damage. Yes, Reeves agreed. We learned that lesson too. For centuries, human wars killed millions of innocent people. Cities burned, civilizations fell. We saw the cost of uncontrolled violence, and we decided there had to be a better way. He pulled up new images. Special forces, covert operations, surgical strikes that ended threats without destroying nations. We developed a new kind of warfare. Instead of sending armies to fight armies, we sent small teams to eliminate the people who made armies necessary. Kill the dictator, and his regime collapses. Destroy the command structure, and the soldiers have no one to follow. Remove the heart, and the body dies. But the psychological impact, Krelvos said. The Vorthak will speak of this for generations. They will tell stories of humans appearing from nowhere, killing their leaders, vanishing like ghosts. They will fear you. Quote, yes, Reeves said simply. They will. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Katie Marsh stood and joined Reeves in the center. Her voice was softer than his, but no less certain. The Galactic Assembly values peace, she said. So does humanity. We have no desire for conquest or empire. We want only to live among you, as friends and partners. She paused, letting her words settle. But we also understand something about peace. It does not maintain itself. There will always be those who see kindness as weakness. There will always be predators who prey on the gentle and the good. The Vorthok were not the first such threat, and they will not be the last. She looked around the chamber at the assembled ambassadors. Humanity offers the galaxy a choice. We can be your friends. We can trade with you, learn from you, share in your wisdom and culture. We can be good neighbors and honest partners. Her voice hardened slightly. Or we can be what we showed the Vorthak. The thing that comes in the night. The shadow that reaches into the darkest places and removes threats before they can grow. The promise that anyone who preys on the innocent will not face armies or fleets. They will face us. General Veltarak stood slowly. His mandibles were still for once. You are offering to be the galaxy's protectors? He asked. No, Katie said. We are offering to be the galaxy's last resort. When diplomacy fails. When armies cannot reach. When a threat exists that cannot be met with honor or open battle. That is when you call us. And what do you ask in return? Katie smiled. It was a warm smile. Genuine and human. Friendship, she said. Nothing more. We spent too long alone on our little world, fighting each other because we had no one else to fight. We do not want that anymore. We want to be part of something larger, something better. She looked at Reeves, then back at the assembly. But we will never forget what we are. We will never pretend to be something we are not. We are humanity. We are small and young, and still learning. But we are also very, very good at one thing. And what is that? Krelvos asked. Danny Reeves answered. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the great chamber. Surviving, no matter what it takes. The assembly voted unanimously to accept humanity's offer, and in the years that followed, whenever a threat arose that could not be met through normal means, a message would go out to a small black ship that waited in the darkness between stars, and the quiet professionals would go to work. 6 months passed since the fall of the Vorthak Dominion. The galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. The 17 systems destroyed by the Vorthak were being rebuilt. Refugee species were returning to their homeworlds. Trade routes reopened. Life went on. But something else had changed too. Something harder to see but impossible to ignore. The elder races looked at humanity differently now. Before the war, humans had been curiosities. Young creatures from a distant world, barely worth attention. Ambassadors smiled politely at them, and then went back to more important matters. No one expected anything from the small species that had arrived so recently on the galactic stage. Now, when human ships passed through busy space lanes, other vessels gave them room. When human ambassadors spoke at the assembly, the chamber went quiet. When human soldiers walked through space stations, people stepped aside. It was not respect, exactly. It was something more complicated. A mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. Appreciation and unease. The galaxy had been saved by humanity, and the galaxy was not entirely sure how to feel about that. Commander Danny Reeves stood on the observation deck of the Quiet Professional, watching stars drift past. The ship was moving through deep space, far from any inhabited system. Its crew went about their duties in silence. They were always silent. Megan Cole approached him with a data pad. New assignments from command, she said. Danny took the pad and scrolled through the files. 3 operations. 3 different corners of the galaxy. 3 problems that the normal methods could not solve. The first was a slaving ring operating in the Outer Rim. They kidnapped members of primitive species and sold them to wealthy collectors. The local authorities knew about it but could not act without starting an interstellar incident. The second was a rogue artificial intelligence that had taken control of a mining colony. It was producing weapons and building an army of drones. Diplomatic efforts had failed. A military assault would kill thousands of innocent hostages. The third was a cult of genetic purists who believed their species was superior to all others. They were planning to release a virus that would sterilize every other species in their sector. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Danny read each file carefully. He had done this work for 20 years. Every mission was different, but they all felt the same. Find the threat. Study the threat. Remove the threat. Move on to the next one. Assign Team 2 to the slavers, he said. I want the entire network dismantled. Every ship, every warehouse, every buyer on their client list. And the leaders? Remove them. Make it visible. I want every slaver in the galaxy to know what happens when you trade in living beings. Megan nodded and made notes. Team 3 for the AI? Yes. Have them coordinate with local forces for the hostage extraction. I want the machine dead, and every drone deactivated within 48 hours of insertion. The cult? Danny paused. This one was more complicated. The cultists were spread across multiple worlds. Their leadership was hidden. Their virus production facility was located under a major city. I will handle this one personally, he said. Assemble Team 1. Full infiltration package. We leave in 6 hours. Full. Megan raised an eyebrow. You are going into the field? This group has been operating for years. They have connections in local governments. They have protection. A conventional strike will not work. He handed back the data pad. This requires a personal touch. She nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. Commander. There is something else. The Assembly wants to know if we will attend the memorial ceremony next month, the anniversary of the Vorthak War's end. Danny was quiet for a moment. He remembered the faces of the 5 soldiers who had ended that war. Marcus Webb and his team. They had received no medals, no parades, no public recognition. Their names were classified. Their actions were secret. The galaxy would never know who had saved them. That was how it should be. Send our regrets, he said. We have work to do. Across the galaxy, life continued. Ships traveled between stars. Merchants sold their goods. Children played in streets that had nearly been destroyed. But in the shadows, the quiet professionals kept working. On a space station near the outer rim, a team of 4 humans watched a slaver king count his money in a private office. By morning, the king and his entire operation would cease to exist. In a mining colony, far from any patrol routes, 2 specialists prepared to breach a facility controlled by a homicidal machine. Within days, the AI would be a memory, and its hostages would be free. And on a ship moving through the darkness, Commander Danny Reeves reviewed intelligence reports on a cult that planned to commit genocide. In 2 weeks, the cult's leaders would die in their beds, their virus would be destroyed, and billions of innocent lives would be saved. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not armies or fleets or weapons of mass destruction. Something smaller, something quieter, something far more effective. Ambassador Katie Marsh gave a speech at the anniversary ceremony. She spoke of peace and cooperation and the bright future that awaited all species. She spoke of friendship between worlds and the bonds that united different civilizations. She did not mention the black ships that waited in deep space. She did not speak of the soldiers who never slept, who never stopped watching, who existed only to ensure that peace remained possible. But everyone in that chamber knew they were there. Everyone understood what humanity had become. The galaxy had asked for an army. They had expected warriors who would meet their enemies in open battle. They had imagined fleets of warships and divisions of soldiers. Instead, humanity had sent something else. Something that did not fight wars. Because fighting wars meant accepting that wars would continue. Something that ended threats not through overwhelming force, but through precision, patience, and the understanding that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent was to remove the guilty. The elder races called them many things: assassins, executioners, ghosts in the machine. Humanity called them specialists. And somewhere in the endless darkness between stars, the specialists continued their work. They would never stop. They would never rest. They would never allow the monsters to win. Because humanity had learned something important during its 10,000 years of violence. The only way to guarantee peace was to make war too costly to consider. And when the cost of war was a visit from the quiet professionals, when the price of aggression was death that came without warning, when every tyrant and warlord knew that no fortress could protect them, then, finally, there could be peace. This was humanity's promise to the galaxy. This was their gift. This was who they were.